While Indiana is trying to play spoiler, Ohio State is laser focused on keeping their championship aspirations alive.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another Buckeye Blitz right here at Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And during this Buckeye Blitz, we're diving into a conversation that I had over at Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, myself, and Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. Join Spencer to talk about tomorrow's big game and what Ohio State must do to avoid being upset by the Hoosiers.
Jacob Goins, Locked On Hoosiers. Jay Stevens, Locked On Buckeyes. It's the game of the week, fellas. It's the game of the week in college football. A top 5 showdown in Columbus, just as we all predicted before the year. A late season top 5 game. Ohio State's hosting. I'm sure everybody predicted it to be Indiana and not Michigan at this point. Jacob, I want to start with you. Indiana can totally get this done, right?
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind, and I'm saying this with full confidence, that Indiana can go, we can compete, and we can win. It's got to be close in the fourth quarter. Indiana leading, tied, or maybe down by just a score or less. We can absolutely win this game. And I think with some of the injury problems that have started to pop up there in Columbus, Jay, you and I have been talking kind of off mic a little bit. I mean, it's starting to get a little dicey. Indiana had a good chance before. Now with some injury problems on that offensive line, Indiana may just smell blood in the water here, guys, as they head up to Columbus.
Jay Stevens, Locked On Buckeyes. I'm picking Ohio State to win the football game, just to be clear.
Smart, man.
I'm just not going with Ohio State's going to crush them. They're going to win by 30. Indiana's going to get exposed. Like, no, this is a good Indiana team. And you know what a great equalizer is when one roster's more talented than another? The quarterback position. And I'm pretty sure Indiana's got the quarterback advantage in this game.
Woo, that's a big statement there. I do think when it comes to his arm, I do think he might
Sue me, Jay.
His arm, I've never been sold on Will Howard's arm, and so I will have to give that nod to Curtis Roark. The one thing I will say about Will Howard is that he has learned from his mistakes this year. We all talk about him with the mistakes he's made in the Oregon game, mistakes against Penn State, mistakes even against other games that you really shouldn't think he would make mistakes in. He's done that. He hasn't let those mistakes really cause him to lose his poise, not stay composed, and really continue just to fall down in that game. And I do think that'll be the thing tomorrow. I do think that when it comes to Will Howard, I'm not going to say he's going to have a perfect game, but I think he's going to do everything Ohio State needs him to do to win the game. Yeah, you might have the better quarterback, but Will Howard is a good quarterback, and he'll be good enough to win the game tomorrow.
I don't know that the quarterback gap is enough for Curtis Roark to go out and outright win this football game, which is why I think Indiana can absolutely hang around. The way they throw it all over the field. And Jay, let's talk about the center injury here. Seth McLaughlin, no relation, but thank you for honoring me anyway with that distinction. He's out for the season. They were already down one starting offensive lineman. They've done a lot of reshuffling. How big of a problem is that for this Ohio State running game?
It's a big problem. However, I think Ohio State is better prepared for this injury than most teams would be, because your now center is a guy who started 12 games a year ago, and he's replacing Seth McLaughlin, who took his job. The left guard starting now is a guy who replaced Donovan Jackson as a starting left guard earlier this year and played pretty well in that spot. So you're not just throwing two guys in there that are very inexperienced as guys that have never started before. Both of these guys have starting experience. Both of these guys know what Chip Kelly and Ryan Day need them to do. But I'm looking at Justin Fry, the O-line coach, a guy who I was kind of on the fence for. Didn't say he needs to go, but I was kind of wondering if he would get a better sense of his development of players. We have seen the O-line, even with some injuries, some guys that I didn't think would be this good, they've been pretty good. And I think with the injury, yeah, it's a massive loss. And I think early in the game, you might see some issues running the ball. But I think you'll see second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, the O-line really get into a groove and really be able to start to establish a run against the Hoosiers.
Jacob.
I don't know, though, Jay. I mean, I got Buckeyes fans in my comments saying they're big time worried that you guys don't have a starting center. And moving the left guard doesn't seem like the best option. They seem to be a little worried on the Hoosier side of things. I don't know.
Well, Jacob, Jacob, I want to ask you a question on this particular front, because I think when people think of Indiana from afar, they think of Curt Cignetti because he's awesome. Just by any objective measure, he's awesome. They think of Curtis Roark, the way they throw the football, and the magical start. But I think the most underrated unit is in the trenches in this game, and that's the Indiana offensive line and the way they have protected Curtis Roark this season and let him take downfield shots consistently. So the Buckeyes offensive line, we'll see how it plays out, but how do you feel about Indiana's offensive line? Because one thing that Oregon was able to do in the lone loss that Ohio State had this season, they protected Dylan Gabriel, and he was able to slice and dice this Ohio State defense, but it's because he wasn't sacked all game.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because as much as we're talking about Ohio State having injury problems on the offensive line, Indiana's dealt with it too, right? We lost one of our starters on the offensive line the week of the Michigan game and had to adjust, and we were able to overcome it. Now, that's a really aggressive Michigan defense. They played really well, and they made it a long day for Indiana's offense. But you're absolutely right. The Heisman-like numbers that Roark is putting up are heavily credited to the offensive line, who have also created tons of holes for Justice Ellison, Tyson Lawton, the 1-2 punch at running back that Indiana's going to use, have used all season long and will continue to use on Saturday tomorrow. And so, yeah, you have to give a ton of credit to them. Now, there's going to be dudes on the Ohio State defensive line that Indiana just has never seen before. And so they've got to be ready for that. They've got to be ready for all the different mismatches, all the different looks that Ohio State's going to draw up and throw at Curtis Roark at the offensive line. But I think that's why they're going to try and get the ball out quickly, establish a ground game, and get it to the playmakers and let them try to beat the Buckeyes on the road.
This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you all the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time still has great features such as all-in pricing. You're able to still see a panoramic view from your seat. They got that lowest price guarantee, and they also got that Game Time ticket coverage, and it's all geared to help you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Simply visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All the action goes down in two places on the FanDuel Sportsbook app and at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Jay, how does Ohio State try and counter that with that great defensive front? JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, all the guys. I mean, is it enough to slow down this Indiana passing attack? And what adjustments do they need to make from the Oregon game from earlier?
So I think that if you just look at those four guys or those guys up front, the four defensive linemen for Ohio State, and just try to use them to get pressure, it's like what we saw against Oregon, Spencer. You can't do that. That's not a good formula to get pressure on any quarterback with these four guys together. You're going to have to figure out some way to get some type of simulated pressure or blitzing an extra guy or two extra guys to try to get Curtis Roark off his spot. Any quarterback that gets pressure up the middle, they hate it. I don't want a guy in my face right now as I'm speaking to you guys on the show. But if somebody was in my face speaking, it might mess up my thought process and the delivery that I have here on the show. Same thing goes with Curtis Roark or any quarterback. Pressure up the middle, they hate it. And so I do think Ohio State's going to do certain things with bringing in Cody Simon, bringing in Sonny Styles, having six guys rush the quarterback, getting some guys around the edge. But also I do think we might find an area where Ohio State goes back to something that they used to do a lot is get pressure up the middle consistently, not just at their linebackers, but looping guys, but also trying to loop guys back around to the middle. So I do think that Ohio State's going to do a lot of things to get pressure up the middle on Curtis Roark, that if you get that pressure, if he moves around a little bit, that's going to be where Tuimoloau comes around and smacks him, because I think that's what needs to happen. Pressure up the middle, is going to help Burt and Igbenogson, who have been struggling lately, defend the guys on the outside.
Jacob, biggest key for Indiana in your score prediction?
Ooh, there's so many of them. I think it's just get on the board early. Don't let the crowd into it. This will be the biggest crowd we play in front of all season long, home or away. I mean, and we know how good the shoe can be. We know how crazy Ohio State fans get. Get on the board early. You cannot turn the football over. It sounds so basic, guys, but it really is the key. I mean, that's why Indiana's 10-0. We don't turn the football over. Roark doesn't throw interceptions. We don't fumble it all that much. Special teams have been a lock this year for Indiana. So keep the football in your hands, get on the board early, and keep it close. And if it's going into the fourth quarter and the Hoosiers are hanging around, watch out. We've got a chance on Saturday.
There was no score prediction in there, Jacob.
Oh, okay. Indiana by 1 million.
Ooh, that's a big number. That's a big number. Jay, what do you think?
I think he's wrong. I do think he's wrong. I got Ohio State winning this game 31-20, and I'll piggyback off that, Spencer. My biggest key in this game, Ohio State has to win the battle in the trenches. I know the quarterbacks are going to talk about those guys and the guys on the outside and Abuka and Jeremiah Smith, but you have to win the battle in the trenches. And I understand there are issues and injuries on the interior of Ohio State's offensive line, even at left tackle as well. You got guys out of spot, center, left guard, left tackle, but you have to win the battle in the trenches. Urban Meyer says it. I've been saying it all year. Big time. We said it again in the Oregon game. You win that game. Whoever wins the battle in the trenches is going to win that game. And I firmly believe the team that wins the battle in the trenches tomorrow is going to win the game. And I'm telling you, Ohio State has the guys to do it. Ohio State wins 31-20, and Buckeye fans are happy.
You and I are very close, Jay. I've got Ohio State 31-24. Jacob Goins, Locked On Hoosiers, shaking his head in disbelief. He'll be shaking his head after the fourth quarter ends on Saturday. Jay Stevens, Locked On Buckeyes. Guys, appreciate it.
You got to hear my thoughts about the game, got to hear Jacob's once again, and even Spencer's. What are yours? What's your score prediction for tomorrow's game? Drop it on the YouTube comment section on this video, or leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, and you can also leave it there. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317@gmail.com. Buckeye fans, we're up out of here on a Feel Good Friday. We'll see you next time.